Today on Tax Insights, Jeff discusses the intricacies of employment classifications. In this episode, we'll explore the differences between employees and independent contractors and the criteria that determine work relationships. We'll also take a closer look at the tax obligations and implications associated with each classification. Let's tune in.
We've been having a great conversation the past couple weeks talking about being an employee or a subcontractor and things like that. I kind of want to round off our discussion today on again, the importance of knowing if you're an employee or a subcontractor, and ultimately what happens if you are misclassified, why that's important.
Yeah, so a lot of people think about it from just the tax point of view, and they say, okay, if you're an employee, you're going to pay some of your Social Security tax. Your employer is going to pay some of the Social Security tax. And if you're an independent contractor, you're kind of wearing both hats. And so you pay both halves of the Social Security and Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
So you're paying a little bit more tax. But at the end of the day, hopefully you've negotiated a little bit higher wage or higher price in order to cover those costs. So people think, well, it's, what's the big deal? We're still paying the same amount of tax. But there's a lot of other things to consider, Terry, about being an independent contractor versus an employee.
Yeah.
Let's say overtime. As an independent contractor, you don't get overtime unless you kind of build that into your contract.
Sure. And I also know that, being a subcontractor, you have the opportunity to have more write-offs or business write-offs for yourself than you do as an employee, correct?
And that's right, because you get to deduct things that employees don't get to deduct, like your mileage and other expenses that you have, work clothes, things like that. And you can take those all as deductions. Maybe even, if you do enough of this, maybe there's a chance you can write off some of your vehicle or quite a bit of your vehicle
Sure.
within your small business.
Yeah. Now, can a current employee, if they want to be a subcontractor, can they go to their boss and say, you know what? I no longer want to be an employee. I want to be a subcontractor. Is that possible? Or again, is that really a case-by-case study? Because not every employer wants that either, correct?
Well, that's right. And just like we talked about over the last couple of weeks, you really have to fit within those guidelines of being an independent contractor in order to be one. But there's things, though, as you're going through that conversation with somebody that, you just don't think about. We talked about that overtime.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, you have to get your own insurance.
Okay.
Workers' comp insurance really doesn't cover you. Liability coverage doesn't cover you from the from the person that you're working for. So you have to get that on your own. And those are the things that, some small businesses just don't really think about.
Yeah. Again, this is why it's important to understand, are you an employee or are you a subcontractor, and understanding, again, all the pros and the cons, right? Because there isn't this magic, this is the right answer. It really is depending upon what you're doing.
Well, and that's just it. And you really want to be careful as both the employee and the employer in this situation, because there is definitely some interest and penalties that can be assessed on the employer if they misclassify. So it kind of goes both ways, that you really have to have that good fact pattern in order to do this
Sure.
independent contractor-employer relationship.
Jeff, great information each and every week here in Tax Insight. If our listeners would like to connect with you and the team over at Hawkins Ash, how do they do that?
I would go right to our website, hawkinsash.cpa, and go to that CPA HQ section.